Hi, yeah, Jack from Noobminster here, back with a very severe haircut, never mind. But here we are to talk about the Constitution a little more. So in the last video, we looked at the real basics. We looked at what a Constitution is. And if you haven't seen that yet, please go back and have a look, because otherwise none of this is going to make a lick of sense, really. Today, what we're going to do is just delve a little deeper into it, and we're going to be particularly looking at written constitutions and the advantages that they have over an unwritten constitution. Sound like a plan? All right, let's get going.
Blah, 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 blah. Noobminster.
The big thing that stood out when looking at the American Constitution was just how simple it seems, especially when we compare it to the horrible, sprawling, complicated mess that is the British Constitution. So just to recap, all of the rules for running America are pretty straightforward in nature, and they're all contained within one single document known as the Constitution of the United States. As blueprints for a nation go, you'd be hard-pressed to find anything that comes close to the US Constitution in terms of brevity. I mean, the whole thing is a very, very svelte 5 pages long. And then there's the matter of its absolutely killer first line.
We the people.
Just hearing those words makes me want to dress up like the Statue of Liberty and go tearing around in a pickup whilst listening to Ted Nugent. And that's the thing with the American Constitution. Not only does it provide a very good technical explanation about how a country should work, it also gives you a very unambiguous sense of what it means to be American, or at least what the Founding Fathers thought it means to be American. Not only that, but it's actually tangible. You can see it, you can touch it, you can hold it. Well, you could hold it if you managed to bust it out of its reinforced glass case in the National Archives, and I don't advise that you try that. Contrast this with Britain's unwritten constitution, a sprawling mass composed of thousands of disparate, unconnected documents and a nebulous clutch of ideas that exist only in the minds of people who can be bothered to grapple with its absurdity. When you look at it this way, it's easy to see why the Americans hold their 227-year-old stack of parchment in such reverence. So anyway, what did the Founding Fathers think that their new nation should look like? Well, for one, they were huge fans of the concept of individual liberty. Now, this basically says that you have the right to do whatever the hell you want to do, providing it doesn't get in the way of anyone else's right to do whatever the hell they want to do. This is enshrined in a section of the Constitution known as the Bill of Rights. And essentially this says that you have the right to believe in what you choose, to say what you choose, and that there are very firm restrictions on how far the state can go in messing with your personal liberty. Now, obviously, there are limits to this. Let's say that your hobby is murdering. The Constitution is not going to protect your right to go around murdering people. But it does show you how seriously they took this concept of individual liberties that they made it a central part of their constitution. Want a good example? Have you ever heard of pleading the fifth? You'll always hear the bad guys in American movies saying it when they've just been nicked and a sweaty copper is screaming at them to come clean. What the alleged bad guy is doing here is invoking the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, which amongst other things states that no one can be forced to divulge information that could incriminate them. The police can huff and puff all they want, but the bad guy's right. If he doesn't want to tell you anything, then it's his legal right not to. And this idea is so deeply ingrained in American society that even the most dumb as rock street crim can reference the relevant amendment correctly. It wasn't just personal liberty that the Founding Fathers were concerned with either. They were also very, very wary of institutionalized power in general. This is why they had their revolution in the first place. And they tried to design a system where no one area of government could grow too powerful. Now, this is outlined at the start of the Constitution, and it's known as the separation of powers. There's also another part which deals with federalism, the concept that each of the individual states that makes up the Union has its own right that the central government can't mess with. Now, these are pretty big and complicated topics we're going to save for another day, but the main thing you need to take away from this is the Constitution is about protecting the little guy from the big guy. It's about protecting the rights of the individual and the individual states from the central government. This means that the Constitution is bigger than any government, and it's also the reason why the President has to swear to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, compare that with Britain for a second. Over here, a government can pass pretty much any law that it wants, providing it can get it through Parliament. The way our constitutional setup works means that once that law has been passed, it then effectively becomes part of the Constitution. So let's say that you have a very strong government. They've got a clear majority. That is to say, they've got enough MPs and enough Lords to outvote any other party or the combined weight of all the other parties. Let's also say that these MPs and these Lords are very well disciplined. That means that they will vote for pretty much anything that the government puts in front of them. In theory, at least, this government now has the power to do anything it wants.
Want to make the wearing of banned t-shirts you've never listened to an offence punishable by death? Boom! It's done! How about rounding up everyone with a top knot and shipping them off to the Falklands? Again, if you've got the votes, then you're golden, because in Britain, the buck stops with Parliament, and if Parliament says it wants to send hipsters to the South Atlantic, then to the South Atlantic they go.
In fact, there's nothing that can stop Parliament from voting on a bill that says, you know what, we're done with democracy. From now on, we're not having any more elections, and if you don't like this government, then tough luck. There's nothing you can legally do about it. This would result in a situation known as an elected dictatorship, and it's one of the classic arguments against an unwritten constitution. By contrast, in America, this is a situation that couldn't happen because such a law would violate the First Amendment. Now, the First Amendment is a part of the Constitution that outlines people's right to express themselves. Voting is counted as an act of expression. So essentially, this law would be unconstitutional. It would violate the Constitution, and thus it would be a thing that cannot be. Now, if you really, really wanted to push something like that through in America, you could try and change the Constitution. But in order to do that, you need a 2/3 majority in both the House of Representatives and the Senate, and then you need 3/4 of all the states in the Union to agree on it. In short, that's not going to happen in a month of Sundays. So if we take all of this into account, you'd be forgiven for concluding that the Americans have actually come up with a much smarter system of government than ours. I mean, after all, it's much easier to comprehend. It's just 5 pages and that pretty much contains the whole shebang. But more importantly, it gives individuals robust protections against the power of the state. It gives them rights that cannot be taken away easily. By contrast, in Britain, Parliament can pretty much do the hell what it wants, providing the rest of Parliament agrees with it. So there's really no such thing as entrenched rights in Britain. However, as with most of these things, there's another side to this story. So in the next video, we're going to begin looking at some of the reasons why unwritten constitutions can be advantageous. And we're also going to start looking at some of the reasons why the respective countries ended up with their respective systems. So until then, please do subscribe and please come back next week. I've been Jack at Noobminster. Hopefully see you soon.